Hello, this is Red Chaos. I'm here to review My Hero Academy Season 4, Episode 12. It's going to be quite a big one. It starts off with Lemillion and Overhaul. They're fighting, and Lemillion gets hurt. He's struggling to fight back right up until Deku gets there. And then immediately, the opening credits start. Afterwards, onto the first scene, the cops capture Mimic. They want him to fix the hallways, but they notice that he can't since the performance enhancing drugs ended up wearing off. So he's not able to do the same as he was doing earlier. So afterwards, the cops question him about the League of Villains, and afterwards, Mimic goes into a rage, vowing to get revenge. Deku, afterwards, learning that the League of Villains are there, he has second thoughts going forward since earlier Eraser was saying that if the League of Villains were there, Deku wouldn't be able to go. But before they really could have any sort of talk or thought about it, Rocklock gives a rousing speech telling him that they need to get forward. And during that rousing speech, he basically shows off saying that he has a wife, he has kids, and he's got a family that he has to take care of. Afterwards, Deku, Night Guy, as well as the Eraser all run off and go over to the fight zone. Later in a small scene, Twice and Toga, they're starting to sneak away, but instead of just leaving and taking their bags and going home, they decide that they're going to stay and watch the fight. They basically explain during that entire time they're not really a fan of either the heroes or the Yakuza at this point, and they just want to see a bunch of guys just get hurt since they know a big fight's coming down. And now onto the scene that was started at the very beginning. Deku and the others break through the wall and strike Overhaul. Eraser goes in and takes Overhaul's quirks while Night Eye goes and rescues the others. Just as they're about to strike, one of the minions gets up and attacks Eraser, making him unable to stop Overhaul's powers. From there, he strikes the ground, sending everyone backwards. Changes the complete notion of the fight once he gets his powers back, because one of the one of his minions takes Eraser away, effectively taking him out of the battle, and from there, no one's really able to stand up to his quirk. And things even get worse as Overhaul takes one of his defeated comrades and ends up fusing with him to get stronger, turning into a new form. Form looks amazing, honestly. Guy looks like a complete monster at this point, and at this point he's clearly stronger, but I definitely do like the new look. On to the next scene, the villain that grabs Eraser. He takes him to a hidden room and strikes him again to make sure that he does not move. They talk at this time, and he explains that Ari is the Yakuza's boss's granddaughter, basically trying to show that he is willing to do anything to basically make the Yakuza as strong as they once were, and that he's basically willing to do whatever it takes, even harm children to do so. In the next scene, you see that there is a pause in the fight, and Overhaul explains to Lemillion that he has lost his powers forever. This shocks Deku and Night Eye, but before they could really move, Overhaul goes in and strikes to finish off Lemillion, but Deku stops him and it restarts the fight. Night Eye interferes, leaving his post, which he told Deku, which Eraser told him to do, saying, "No, I'm going to fight. You go out there and take care of Lemillion and Eri." And it looks like this was basically over his guilt over seeing his protege get hurt, and it seemed that the whole idea of Lemillion losing his powers affected Night Eye a little bit more than Deku, just basically due to the fact that he basically was his protege and seeing him get hurt. But it's just a fact that he just does not seem to be the right guy to take Overhaul on. Yes, he does have abilities to essentially predict somebody else's movements, but it's just like, do you really have the strength to stop him? That was the thing I just found funny. So during the fight, Night Eye has a flashback, basically saying of why he won't look too far into the future, and you can see that it was the idea of essentially seeing All Might's death, the ability to see All Might's death, and feeling that he is responsible, especially if he thinks that All Might is going to die. And I honestly do like it. It really does explain of why he has that code of he won't look too far, and he does sometimes fear, and it was supposed to hear that if someone does die or someone does meet a bad ending, is it his fault? As the battle goes on, Deku and Lemillion are finally able to get out of the battle zone, basically telling Lemillion and Ari to move. At that time, Night Eye ends up getting skewered. He was not able to stop Overhaul, and Deku immediately starts running back. During that time, Night Eye has a prediction. He basically just wants to see, was the sacrifice worth it, and will Ari escape along with Lemillion and Deku? And fortunately, he has a prediction that Deku will end up dying. It's a very nice build-up, but I feel like that's been done already. Kind of been built up earlier in the season with Night Eye, and now on to with Deku. Mm, I mean, it's a nice thing. It has a build-up to the fight, but it is kind of odd because now there's not a lot of long-term build-up. Either Deku's going to die or Night Eye's predictions don't really mean anything. So it does put a quite a big build-up to the fight, but it was just kind of odd. And during this time, Deku does come back and attacks Overhaul, but is unfortunately hit by a large rock spike that brings Overhaul attacks him with as he tries to get a good shot in on Overhaul. Afterwards, Lemillion tries to escape the mansion while Deku is hurt. Overhaul then uses his mutated hand that he got from the fusion to warn Ari that someone else will die because of her. It seems as though it's this case of using death, death, and death. It's not specifically as in he's going to kill you as you are. It's more of if you're quirkless, you are dead. That seems to be the case of what's going on because he keeps on bringing up the idea that someone's gonna die, someone's gonna die, someone's gonna die, and he kept on saying that Lemillion was essentially dead, and it doesn't look like he's going to attack Lemillion, so it seems more as if he would consider a life being non-quirkless death. Kind of puts a weird perspective on the world of My Hero and the way that they would look at someone that does not have a quirk in a world full of people with thousands of crazy insane quirks. Well, he basically says that somebody else will die if she is not able to come back. And because of that, she eventually does, and she admits that she does not believe that Deku can beat him. And what's even worse is that Night Eye also says the exact same thing. He tells Deku the prophecy that he sees both of them are dying, and that Overhaul ends up getting Ari and escaping. Deku puts in one of his motivational speeches, has a bit of a hero moment there, says that they're both wrong and will continue to fight, and says he's going to smash through the future. And right before they get back to fighting, the Dragon Girl appears from about 2 or 3 episodes ago. She breaks through the roof of the basement and attacks Overhaul, and the episode ends. Overall, I gotta say, I did like the episode. Quite a bit of action in this one. Quite a bit. Yeah, some very good fight scenes. And finally, it seems as though as if we're about to go into the major climax of this arc, as you're now going to get to see Overhaul versus Deku. It looks like all for the sake of Ari. And I gotta say, as far as the storytelling is done pretty well. It got you to kind of feel for Lemillion, feel for Night Eye, feel for Deku, basically on how these three, um, how they're basically all brothers in arms, all basically wanting to save this one girl, and it's not just those two, but how they basically got a lot of other people to believe in that as well. If I were to have an MVP of the episode, it's definitely Overhaul. He definitely makes it. Guy is an insane villain with an insane quirk, being able to fuse and change into a form which is it's just massive. It's a fantastic villain form, has a fantastic look, looks scary, looks threatening, but it's not over the top. You see some of these others where they kind of start looking like crazy RPG final bosses. This one is still very, very good. So definitely very good, and also love the idea of the manipulation. He instead of just running over and grabbing Ari, since that seemed to be the prize, and it looked as though as if the heroes would just escape, even to the point of Deku literally just being a sacrificial pawn while Lemillion and Ari escape. He then uses his manipulation of Ari, which he's done for many, many years, it looks like at this point, to basically say, hey, get her to come back to him. So it makes the guy look like a complete villain. Just very good. The guy's just very good whenever he's on screen. So I gotta say, he was the MVP of the episode. I'd say, as far as the worst character, I'd say Night Eye. I mean, he kind of just runs. He kind of stops being smart and goes on with his emotions. I get the fact that he feels very guilty, specifically about what happened to Lemillion, and that's pretty good. But it's just like it's just not using the smarts at that point. If he would have just ran and just let Deku fight him, the guy who can break walls rather than a guy with a psychic ability and no real no real power. Like, I just didn't see of how he felt that he was ever going to hurt or ever going to get really any real shots on Overhaul. I mean, he's just a tall guy with basically some nice pogs, but it's just not going to get the job done against a guy with that kind of power. It's nice, but I just didn't see of how that was smart. It would have been a little bit better if Deku would have done the fighting. He grabs him and then comes back, but that just ended up being the case. Another thing I didn't like was the idea that he went over through and saying, I don't want to see somebody else die, just to go out there and try to and end up seeing somebody else dying. And it kind of wrecks a huge plot point here. The entire early season was basically built off of All Might's gonna die, All Might's gonna die, All Might's gonna die. We don't know when, but he's going to die. And now, instead of the All Might's gonna die long into the future in some fight we don't know of, now it's turned into, oh well, Deku's gonna die. Deku's gonna die right here and now. It puts a lot of build up to the fight. It's a nice moment for Deku. The problem is if Deku doesn't end up dying, then his prediction of All Might long into the future, which could have had massive buildup, isn't going to mean jack squat. I feel, though, is that they took a really good plot point, maybe into the future, and squandered it by essentially now pushing it in for short term. It's basically you're throwing away the dollars to only earn about 25, maybe 50 cents. It just doesn't seem worth it. So unless Deku dies in the very next episode, which very well could happen, and I'll go back and say that I was wrong, but unless Deku dies, it just throws away a very good plot point that could have been used much later in the series. All right, that's my opinion. This is Red Chaos out, and I will be back working with episode 4. Well, not episode 4, sorry, with episode 13 of season 4.